Welcome everybody to my video Sacrificing Against an International Master. This is UK National Master Cengiz Hasman from Cyprus, and I would like to present my game against International Master Simon Ansell from England. And I had the white pieces and Simon had the black pieces. So let's start. I start with d4, d5, c4, c6. So we've got the Slav defense, and I decide to avoid the main line complications and exchange on d5. So I've developed both my knights, and here my opponent makes a surprise move, knight e7. And this is pretty rare, and it does look like a waste of time. However, you still have to be on your toes against an international master, because it looks like he'll have to move this knight again, and it does look like a waste of time, to be honest. But because the position is quite closed, it's difficult to take immediate advantage. So this knight from g8 travels to c6, taking the b8 knight's favorite square in this type of position. So I just play sensible moves, developing my pieces. And I open a square for my bishop in case it wants to go to h2. I control this g4 square. I develop my bishop, castle. And my opponent plays f5, and this looks like a Dutch stonewall position with these three pawns here. Normally there's a pawn on c6 if there's no exchange on d5, and black aims to cement a knight into e4. However, the difference between the Dutch stonewall structures is that this c-file is open, and this is usually good for white. So I've got plans of expanding on the queen side. b4 is a possibility, and these maneuvers. It's interesting, because the g8 knight came to c6 and the b8 knight came to f6. So black has spent a lot of time in doing this. So I decide to put a knight in the center. And now I go for knight a4. And the reason is I would like to place my knight onto c5. And this would put pressure on b7, d7. If the b pawn is pushed, a6 comes under pressure, and e6 is attacked. It ties the bishop down for the moment. So some exchanges occur, and I end up with the bishop pair, which lots of players, including myself, do like. And I'm a little bit ahead of development, because I've got a rook on the only open file. My queen is active, and I've already mentioned I possess the bishop pair. Now I just try to double up, use my development advantage, and double up on the c-file. So my opponent does have to be careful here. And my e5 pawn is under attack, and I could have doubled if I wanted and sacrificed a pawn, but I decided to make a nice central move. Queen protects the pawn, and also my queen is controlling this important b6 square, because the black's queen might want to come there at some point. And now we have this idea which is played in some openings. The French defense comes to mind, and it's trying to improve this knight because black wasn't happy with it being on d7, and he wanted to place it on c6. This is why he played this the knight to b8. So I decide to double, and my opponent plays knight c6, attacking my queen. You can pause the video here and see what would you play here. White's queen is under attack, and if the queen does decide to move, he should probably go to f4, because he'll be giving up his e5 pawn. So here is a big moment for white. So pause the video, please, if you wish. So I was thinking in this game, it was a team competition in the London League, and I was playing board 1, and we had 75 minutes to make 30 moves, and then we get 15 minutes each. So it was a reasonably fast game, but I did have to think carefully about what to do. So a big decision, and I was looking at rook takes c6, and I wasn't exactly sure at that moment whether it worked, because it is a risk. You're giving a rook 5 points for a knight and a pawn, so you're losing a point. So whilst I was thinking, I said to myself, if the roles were reversed, if my international master opponent was in my position, would he play this exchange sacrifice? And then it became clear to me that he probably would have, and this helped me make this decision of rook takes c6, and I did play it. So why did I play it? Well, if you look at white's pieces, the queen is in the center, so it's controlling some good squares. The rook is active, it's already attacking e6, it's attacking a6, and white's pieces are doing so much more than black's 2 rooks and queen. So I felt that I've got extra compensation due to piece activity. I didn't grab this a6 pawn because I wanted to keep control of the position. So I attacked the queen, made him go on the defensive, and then pushed b4. So he can check me and take a3, but he'll be dropping this really important e6 pawn, which would then mean d5 will probably drop. And now, because my rook is better than my opponent's rook, I don't want to exchange. My rook is very active in the enemy camp, so I play rook b6. And he's really, passive, to be honest. So he comes to protect e6 with the idea of releasing his queen from this defensive duty of e6. So then I just push on. a3 was a weakness, it's not anymore, and it's important to try and have as little weaknesses as possible. I would like to point out that when the game was played, my opponent's rating was 2391, and I was about 2150. So we have a check. The king is goes to a safe place, and now he comes after my f2 pawn. However, I actually give him this pawn in return for this a6 pawn, and this creates two connected passed pawns which are very strong, and taking this f2 is not critical. So my bishop attacks this rook. I'm ready to push at the right time, and then he plays rook e7. Again, should you wish, please pause the video. What would you play in this position? So think a little bit if you wish. So I had to calculate carefully, and I played the tactical capture. Rook takes e6. So the point is, after he played rook e6, I play queen d5 with a double attack on the rooks, and it's very important, this bishop is controlling this e8 square. So if he did try to protect, then my bishop takes, and this rook is still under attack because of the pin on the king. So you need to be careful when making captures such as rook e6, but if you've calculated everything carefully, then it's fine. So I've got the choice of taking which rook I want, but I take this rook, I say check, and then I take the other pawn. And as you can see, I've got 2, 4, 5 pawns and the bishop against a rook and 2 pawns. So I've now got a very good advantage, a winning advantage. All I do is I threaten mate on h7 with the bishop forming a battery with the queen. This is like a forced move. I check, another forced move by black, and now I play bishop e4, and this is a double attack. I'm attacking the rook and I'm threatening mate on d5. So black can't stop this d5 check and protect the rook on a8. So he can stop one of them, but not both of them, because obviously if the rook comes to d8, the queen just takes it. And my opponent resigned here, and this was a very good win for me. So I'd like to say that, as I keep on saying, not to be intimidated by your titled opponents. Even if you do get defeats, just play them when you get the chance. Enjoy the experience, and like in this position, if we go back to the critical point of rook c6. So in this position, I mean, Houdini actually gives this as an rook takes c6 as equal, but there's also the psychological element. I mean, my opponent is getting this exchange sacrifice by a lower rated player, and he's passive. So it wasn't easy for him to defend this position. So yes, thank you very much for listening.